All right, well, good afternoon and welcome to the Supporting Client Health and Wellness class presented by the Far Northern Regional Center's clinical team. My name's Jen Badger and I'm an RN. I work in the Far Northern Regional Center Reading office, and it's my pleasure to introduce some of the other members of our clinical team. I'll start with Dr. Christine Austin, our medical director.
Good afternoon. I'm glad you all are here to join us today.
And also, I'd like to introduce our other RN out of the Chico office, Nellie Camarinen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I hope you enjoyed today's class.
So let's see if I can move. All right, well, welcome to today's class. This is the third class in a 5-part segment on the Fatal 5, which are the top 5 causes of death for individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. In the last 2 classes, Nellie shared some really valuable information on constipation and impaction and aspiration. These videos are available on our YouTube channel, so if you missed those classes, feel free to go on and check them out. Today, though, we're going to talk about dehydration. Why is hydration so important? What are the effects of dehydration? What conditions put some people at a higher risk for dehydration? And what symptoms would we want to be watching out for? And what to do if somebody's dehydrated, as well as prevention measures that can be implemented right now. So I can get to there we go. So did you know that the human body is made up of 60% water? You can see here that our most important organs, the brain, heart, liver, and kidneys, are all 75% or more water. These organs are what keeps us going, and their functioning is necessary for us to be healthy. And hydration is very important to keep them working properly. But why do we need to drink fluids? Can't our bodies just hold on to the water it has to be able to function? Well, the reality is we are constantly losing water. There's 2 types of water loss from the body, insensible and sensible. It's hard to imagine that we lose up to 30 ounces a day just from breathing and moisture loss through our skin that we don't even feel. And depending on urine output, and if we're having diarrhea or vomiting, or in a case of bleeding, like from an injury, we can lose another 60 ounces or more. So there's this constant need to get fluid into our bodies to replace the water that's lost just through living normal every day and our normal bodily functions. So water is used by the body to keep our kidneys filtering our blood and producing urine. Water keeps food and fluids moving through our GI tract and actually increases the absorption of nutrients. It keeps the brain working properly. It lubricates our joints so we can move easily and without discomfort. Hydration helps us maintain a normal body temperature around 98.6. It makes up a high percentage of our blood and keeps blood cells moving through the circulatory system so they can deliver oxygen to our cells and take away carbon dioxide. And we can't produce our own body fluids without water. Fluids such as blood plasma, lymph fluid, respiratory secretions, bile, stomach acid, etc. These are all made with water. So what is dehydration? Dehydration is having insufficient body water and fluids needed to carry out normal functions. And it occurs when a person is not taking in enough fluids or loses more fluid than they're taking in. If you look around online, many resources say that 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated because we simply do not drink enough water to compensate for the water that we lose. Dehydration can be mild, moderate, or severe. While mild dehydration often has symptoms that are overlooked or ignored, severe dehydration can lead to serious complications and can even be fatal. So let's look at a few of these possible complications. So we'll start off with kidney function. Kidneys filter waste from the body via urine. And extreme dehydration for an extended period of time can cause severe damage to the kidneys. Your kidneys are filtering out waste and balancing electrolytes and salts in the blood. And when the renal system or kidney system is compromised or shuts down, toxins begin to build up in the blood. Electrolytes and fluids also build up in the body and can cause swelling, which seems odd because you would think if you're dehydrated, you wouldn't be swelling because swelling seems like you're retaining fluid, right? But that buildup of all the toxins and the electrolytes can cause swelling when you're in kidney failure. Severe kidney failure can result in severe illness, hospitalization, or even death. Now we'll talk about digestion. Hydration is a key component to keeping your internal pipes flowing properly and regularly. Dehydration often results in constipation, in addition to gastritis, which is inflammation of the stomach, acid reflux, and in some cases, ulcers. Drinking water helps produce digestive acid that in turn helps your body break down food. When your body doesn't get enough water, it's unable to absorb the proper amount of nutrients from your food. And brain function. As you saw earlier, our brain is made up of 75% water. When we become dehydrated, even the tiniest bit, our brain has difficulty functioning. It can leave us feeling confused or forgetful. We can have a change in our mood, trouble communicating. And furthermore, prolonged dehydration in older adults causes brain cells to actually shrink. And this has been linked to a symptom of the onset of dementia and Alzheimer's. And you can see here in the picture on this slide, a scan of a normal brain that's well hydrated, and then a dehydrated brain. And what a huge difference. And the brain is actually shrunk and sort of deflated, if you will, not with air, but with water. So it's not going to be functioning as well. Oh, it's time for a polling question. Let's see. So this is a multiple choice. You can check all the answers that apply. And then when you're done, you can hit submit in the bottom right-hand corner. And I'll be able to pull up what everybody's answers were like collectively. So which of the following conditions can lead to dehydration? And I'll give you just a little bit longer. Okay, we're at 20. All right, well, a little more than half of you have responded. So I'll go ahead and hit, and hopefully I can bring the results up. Can you all see that? Okay, I can see it on my other screen. So I can see that the majority of you checked most of these answers, right? And that would be correct. Actually, the only one of these conditions that doesn't cause dehydration would be a diet high in salt. Salt actually causes the body to retain more water. So a lot of times people who are struggling with dehydration, doctors will actually tell them to increase the salt in their diet. But all of these other things I'm going to exit out of there, can cause dehydration. So severe acute diarrhea actually can cause a really tremendous loss of water and electrolytes. And vomiting can make that even worse. And if you have a fever, that can make it even worse. So you can imagine if you had the flu and you had, vomiting and diarrhea and a fever, there's a very, very good chance that you're going to get dehydrated. We lose water when we sweat. So it's important to drink lots of fluids when exercising or working outside, or when you're exposed to prolonged heat. Hot weather increases the amount that you sweat and the amount of fluid that you lose. We live in an area where it's very hot. 4 or 5 months out of the year, it's really hot here. So really being out in the heat is going to put you at risk of being dehydrated. So we need to increase our fluid intake during hot weather. Chronic illnesses such as diabetes, especially if it's uncontrolled or untreated, can cause increased urination, which may lead to dehydration. Kidney and heart disease those individuals may take medications that increase the risk of dehydration, such as increased urination from diuretics and some blood pressure medications. Medications like antipsychotics and antihistamines, laxatives, lithium, these can all lead to dehydration. And constipation is a chronic illness that can cause dehydration, because when people are really constipated, they may not feel like eating or drinking very much, which actually makes the constipation worse, and it causes dehydration, and dehydration makes constipation worse. And that's a really bad cycle that folks can get on. Illness in general makes you less likely to feel like eating or drinking. But also large wounds or burns contribute to fluid loss. So that is something to keep in mind as well. And these conditions can happen to any of us. So it's important to be aware of the risk to you and me, but some people are at an increased risk of dehydration. And those include older adults, infants and children, people using support from others for their liquid needs, and people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. Older adults actually develop an impaired response to thirst. They don't feel thirsty even though they need to drink, and so they don't drink when they need to. Infants and children are dependent on others for their fluid intake. And adults even who are dependent on others, such as those who are disabled, can be at particular risk if fluids aren't offered at regular intervals throughout the day. And people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, because they may not be able to explain when they're thirsty, and they may not be able to get a drink for themselves. I'm just going to clear this annotation. Thank you. So thirst isn't always a reliable first indicator too. Many people don't feel thirsty until they're already dehydrated. By the time a person experiences thirst, they may have lost 2 to 3% of their body weight in fluids. That's why it's important to increase fluid intake in hot weather or when someone's ill. And thirst may not be a reliable sign of the need for water in the intellectually disabled or developmentally disabled population. A better indicator of proper hydration is clear or light colored urine. And we'll talk more about that later. But just wanted to point out that communication challenges put people with developmental disabilities, especially those who are nonverbal or have very limited ability to communicate. They can't ask for a drink when they're thirsty or tell you when they need to come out of the sun or are feeling overheated. They also can't tell you if their urine is dark or concentrated or report other symptoms of dehydration. So that these folks really rely on us to be able to know when they might need to drink or when they should be proactively drinking more fluids, and then also recognizing the symptoms of dehydration. Mobility issues make it very difficult as well for individuals with disabilities because they prevent access to the fluids that they need. They can't move themselves out of the sun on their own if they're getting hot. And they may have decreased upper body strength or tremors or poor coordination. So they might be able to hold a glass or a cup of water, but perhaps they struggle to get it up to their mouth for drinking, and they may even spill more fluid than they consume. Oral motor dysfunction or poor oral health can cause a person to avoid eating or drinking. They may have pain when they're chewing or swallowing, when eating or drinking, and so they avoid it. Or when they drink, they aren't able to get all of the fluids into their body. This is also a choking risk. And if you were on the last class, Nellie talked a lot about dysphagia or trouble swallowing and how that puts people at risk for aspiration. But people who struggle to swallow may also refuse to eat or drink if they know that they're going to cough or they're going to choke when they do it. Maybe if liquids are thickened, it can increase their fluid intake because they're more comfortable taking in more fluid because it's easier to swallow. Or maybe they could benefit from a special type of cup. Did you know that adults produce 1 to 1.5 liters of saliva per day? Normally, we just swallow it and reabsorb it into our bodies. But for individuals who have constant drooling, they're losing all of that fluid and need to maintain adequate water intake throughout the day to compensate for that. So compared to the numbers that I shared earlier for the general population, somebody who's constantly drooling, they would actually need to drink 1 to 1.5 liters more per day to make up for the fluid that they're losing, because they're losing more than the rest of us. Oh, okay, it's time for another polling question. Let me get to that screen. All right. This is another multiple choice question. Which of these are symptoms of dehydration? We talked about a few of these. All right. Oh, they're still coming in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end it and then share our results. Hey, you guys did really great on this poll. So symptoms of dehydration, chapped lips, yes. Headache, yes. Oftentimes that's the first symptom that people have is slight headache. It looks like not very many people picked hyperactivity, and that is a good thing because hyperactivity is actually not a symptom of dehydration. Dark urine, yes. Confusion, from that brain shrinkage. Fast heart rate is a symptom of dehydration. And weight gain is not. So very, very good. Here's a list of a lot of the symptoms of dehydration. Yeah, thirst, of course, like we said, it's not always the first symptom, but yes, people will get thirsty. having a dry, sticky mouth, chapped lips. Bad breath is actually a symptom of dehydration. And tongue fissures or having a brown tongue. And I had hoped to get a picture to share with you of what a tongue fissure looks like, but it's kind of like a crater, you know, midline on the tongue that develops if you're not as hydrated. Basically, your tongue should be, you know, full and not have like what looks like cracks in it. Having a headache, feeling dizzy, those mood changes or unclear thinking, and feeling really tired. People can get muscle weakness, cramps. Sometimes, you know, we see people, maybe they're weak enough that they are struggling to walk. Their urination is decreased. They're not peeing as much, or their urine is really dark. Constipation and impaction can be a symptom of dehydration. And decreased skin elasticity. This is a little harder to tell in older adults, because older adults have less elasticity in their skin anyways, but in a young adult, you would expect the skin to be nice and elastic, meaning that, you know, if you pinch it up on the top of your hand and you let go, it should just pop right back into place and not sit there for a while. And weight loss, because they're, you know, they're losing that water weight, right? So, I mean, why are there so many varied symptoms? I mean, it's a pretty broad list here of different types of things that are going on with someone who's dehydrated. And really, it's because most of the body's systems and functions are affected by dehydration. Signs of severe dehydration: sunken in eyes, sunken cheeks, a lack of sweat, low blood pressure, because if you don't have all that water in your blood pressure is going to go down. You're not going to have as much blood in there to keep the pressure up. And a rapid heartbeat for the same reason. There's not as much blood volume, and so your heart is actually beating faster to try and move the blood around and get oxygen out to your organs. People who are severely dehydrated can be really confused, really weak, constipated, like we talked about on the previous slide. They can actually get medication toxicity because the medication is more concentrated because it's in a smaller volume of blood in the body. And also because the kidneys aren't filtering it out as well. Some individuals can have seizures, and it can even cause coma or death. So close monitoring really is the key. Keep a record of what signs and symptoms you observe and actions that you've taken to address those concerns. And report concerns to a known contact. You should all know who to call if you have a concern about a client who you're caring for. Document intake and output. It doesn't have to be super exact, but, you know, keep track of, you know, how many bottles of water did they drink today? How many cups of water did they have? How many times did they use the restroom? Document that, write it down so that, you know, someone looking back over the last couple of days can say, oh yeah, look, you know, they look like they're dehydrated, and I can see that they really haven't been using the bathroom as much. What's going on? And pay close attention to urine output. Is it dark? Is it concentrated? Concentrated urine tends to smell stronger. Are they urinating less frequently? For individuals who are incontinent and using briefs, it's a little easier to monitor because care staff are directly involved with helping to change the client and will hopefully notice if they've been dry a long time. But for clients who toilet independently, you may need to rely on them to report to you about their urine. Staff can monitor how often they use the restroom and then ask the client about their urine color. To this point, it's important to teach clients to recognize when their urine is dark and ask them to let you know if it is. This is a graphic that I pulled off the internet, and there's a lot of them out there. It's really easy to print something like this up and use it as a teaching tool with the clients that you serve. Maybe tape it to the wall in the bathroom as a reminder to the client to let you know if their pee is in the darker range. Or if you're monitoring somebody who's at risk or who you think is dehydrated, ask them to let you see it before they flush the toilet. But here you can see the very, very light side of the spectrum is really well hydrated. And then as you get more dehydrated, it gets darker and darker. In the medical field, we talk about tea-colored urine. And when somebody has tea-colored urine, that's a really, really bad sign. The goal would be to try and keep your urine as clear as possible. So how do we respond when somebody's got the signs and symptoms of dehydration? Most mild dehydration can be treated by drinking fluids, but you want to rehydrate gradually. Adults should rehydrate by drinking about 12 8-ounce glasses of water over the course of a day. Under certain circumstances, though, rehydrating too rapidly can result in water intoxication. So you don't want to just be, chugging water as fast as you can. This can lead to hyponatremia or low sodium levels, so take it slow. And if somebody's on a fluid restriction, be sure to reach out to their physician for guidance on this. If someone has moderate or severe dehydration, they probably need to go to the emergency room to get IV fluids. Interventions done at the ER can include lab work to determine if they're dehydrated and to determine the effects on the body, such as medication levels. So call the doctor, though, if an individual has a fever that doesn't get better with fever medications, or vomiting where they're unable to keep any fluids down, if they're having diarrhea more than 5 times in a day, anytime that there's mucus or blood that's red or black in diarrhea, that would be, an indication that there's blood in it if it's black or red. Blood and vomit, a swollen abdomen or increasing abdominal pain, increased irritability, that can also be a sign of dehydration, a decrease in or lack of urine, increased dizziness or lightheadedness, or being very, very sleepy, or just a general decrease in the level of activity. These can all be signs that they're dehydrated. So it's a good idea if any of these things are going on, you give the doctor a call. If it's not that easy to reach the doctor, then it might be worth taking a trip to urgent care. Or if that's not available to you, then going by the emergency room. But we definitely want to be proactive. So emergency situations, these include having a heart rate that's greater than 120 at rest, especially if they're also short of breath or feeling faint. Confusion or changes in mental status, really unusual behavior, having difficulty walking. I actually see this one a lot where clients will just be wobbly, they're not walking very well, and then they end up going to the emergency room, and a lot of the times they end up with a diagnosis of dehydration. If someone's extremely hot or cold to the touch, their body temperature is really hot, really cold, any fainting or sudden dizziness, weakness, these are all reasons why you would want to go have them taken to the emergency room. If somebody doesn't have or hasn't had seizures and all of a sudden they're having a seizure, that's an emergency. Or if maybe they have a seizure disorder and they're having repeated seizures that are uncontrolled, that would be an emergency. And I know you guys probably already know this. Severe or persistent vomiting or diarrhea. And of course, if someone's unresponsive or unconscious, right, we're going to definitely call 911. It's really important to make sure that all of the staff who care for an individual or support them, that they all know what to do in a medical and emergency. So complications of untreated dehydration, a lot of folks will get urinary tract infections because of that, that lack of urine flow, which really keeps the bladder sterile. You can develop kidney stones, and then of course, kidney failure, like we talked about. Electrolyte imbalances, which can lead to involuntary muscle contractions or loss of consciousness. And if not drinking enough fluids when doing vigorous activity, it can lead to heat injury, such as heat cramps, exhaustion, or heat stroke. And low blood volume shock or hypovolemic shock, which causes a drop in the blood pressure and a drop in the amount of oxygen getting to vital organs. And this can cause coma or death if it's not treated right away. It's so very important that staff know the symptoms of dehydration so they can quickly respond and prevent serious complications from occurring. All right, it's time for our last polling question. This is a true-false question. To stay hydrated, I should drink 1/2 of an ounce of fluid for every 1 pound of body weight. True or false? Okay, I'll go ahead and end it there. All right, we have 65% say true, 35% say false. And the answer is true. It's important to drink enough fluids, and the general guideline is 1/2 ounce of fluid for every pound of body weight. So this means that for somebody who weighs 150 pounds, they should be drinking 75 ounces per day of water or other fluids, which is about 4.5 16-ounce bottles of water. So some other ways to prevent dehydration is eating plenty of fruits and vegetables that are high in water content. I didn't list these out, but I was surprised when I was looking some of this information up on the internet that vegetables such as broccoli, which to me seems kind of dry, and cauliflower, they're actually really, really high in water content. So eating fruits and veggies is a great way to get some more fluids into your body. If you're feeling hungry, drink water. Have water or some other fluids available to drink during or between meals. Drinking fluids before, during, and after exercise is really important because we're going to lose more fluids when we're exercising. Increasing fluids when you're in the sun or it's really hot. And avoiding caffeinated beverages such as coffee, tea, soda, and energy drinks. So let's talk about that just a tad. There's high amounts of sugar that are added to soda and sports drinks. I think soda is like 1 teaspoon of sugar per ounce. So in a 12-ounce can of soda, there's 12 teaspoons of sugar in that. It's really high sugar content. And then caffeinated drinks such as coffee, tea, soda, energy drinks, they contain a lot of caffeine. And then other drinks to avoid would be alcoholic beverages. And the reason why is because sugar, caffeine, and alcohol all act like diuretics, causing increased urination and water loss. So if you're trying to rehydrate with something that's got a lot of sugar in it, or in the case of like energy drinks, it may have a lot of sugar in it and caffeine, it's actually going to cause your body to urinate more and lose fluids. So it's not as good for you as you might think to replace the fluids that you're naturally losing throughout the day. Some better options are here on this slide. And of course, with clients, you have to keep in mind dietary restrictions, texture limitations, but these are just some examples of fluid options that are healthier for you. Of course, water. Some people don't like to drink water. They don't like the flavor. I mean, it's flavorless, but they just don't like it, right? They need something with flavor in it. So, you can try adding sliced lemon or cucumber, pineapple stuff to a pitcher of water to make it taste better. Fruit juice or fruit slushies. And although these have natural sugars in them, they're definitely not as diuresing as like the high fructose corn syrup that's added to sodas and energy drinks. Iced herbal tea. Herbal tea is not caffeinated, or you can just buy the decaf version of coffee or tea. Sherbet, milk or milk substitute. And then of course, popsicles probably have sugar added, but most of these things come in sugar-free as well. Jello, soups and broths are a good way to get in some fluid. They also contain a lot of salt. So keep in mind, of course, if someone's on a salt restriction, you wouldn't want to give them really high salt soups and stuff. But for most folks, that added salt actually helps your body retain more fluid. And then, of course, putting ice cream, Pedialyte, it's great when people are sick for rehydrating. And then fruits and veggies and salads, which I know are not fluids. I just threw those on there because they contain a lot of water. So some ways that you can help prevent dehydration in the people that you serve is to be aware of medications that they might be on that can contribute to dehydration. And you can contact their doctor or a pharmacist for some advice if you have some concerns. Maybe they're on medication that's can cause dehydration and they also don't take a lot of fluids in. But, you know, that's something that you can talk to their doctor about. Determine like what are their preferred fluids and try to keep those available all the time. You know, make sure that there's some in the fridge or, you know, easily accessible to them. And provide a personal water bottle when clients are out in the community so that they've got it right there with them. They're not going, you know, several hours without drinking. So, and having those water bottles available at all times. I like to keep water bottles like in my vehicles, and it's really handy if you're out and about to be able to just have access to fluids. And then increasing fluids when somebody is sick. Anytime that a client is ill and you're caring for them, just keep in mind that you should be offering fluids frequently. And of course, like I said earlier, if they are on a fluid restriction, you might talk to their doctor for suggestions, especially if they're ill, because, you know, maybe the doctor will tell you that, you know, while they're ill, you're not going to worry so much about it, or maybe it's still very important. So you just want to check in with them about that. And educating people who have developmental disabilities about the importance of drinking fluids. An important step to take is having a care plan for individuals who are at risk of dehydration. So first, you'll need to identify individuals who are at higher risk for dehydration. Those with mobility problems or communication challenges, or who depend on caregivers to provide them fluids, or those who need to be reminded to drink fluids. And of course, older adults, because they're at higher risk. If a person's had episodes of dehydration in the past, try to find out the circumstances that led to that event. And this information can be used to develop a protocol to prevent future dehydration events. Determine what strategies are going to be utilized for monitoring and prevention. This may include tracking intake and output. It could be a schedule of offering water or other drinks. And then develop policies or procedures, protocols to maintain that person's health, wellness, and safety. And write a dehydration prevention plan. So you want clear instructions regarding fluid intake requirements. How much fluid do they need? And then it's good to set as part of the plan an acceptable minimum amount of fluid intake. So you know, toward the end of the day, if you're not reaching that, and you can kind of, encourage extra fluids, maybe, to make up for not drinking earlier. Have criteria for monitoring the intake and output. Maybe you have a log that you're tracking it on, or, maybe you're supposed to ask them when they come out of the restroom each time. whatever that might be, that should be part of their prevention plan. It's good if on the plan there's a list of the signs and symptoms to watch for, especially that are client specific, because certain people are going to have probably different symptoms when they haven't been drinking enough. And then what to do if you recognize symptoms of dehydration and who to notify, right? It might be a house manager, it might be a family member, it might be their doctor, whoever that person is, you want to have that on the plan along with their contact information, so that the staff who's caring for the client day to day, they know who to call and let know, that they're having symptoms of dehydration, that you're worried, etc. So, and then of course, don't forget to be a role model and drink lots of fluids throughout your shift. And, when you're drinking fluids, encourage clients to do so. And that's a great way to get them drinking. So just as a quick announcement, we talked about this last month, and I just wanted to remind everybody that there are some CPR training resources available. The ecprcertification.com is one, and then the redcross.org is another. These are online CPR classes. And as we're going through talking about the Fatal Five, we just want to remind everybody that it's really, really great if staff can get CPR certified, so that when an emergency occurs, you know how to respond while you're waiting for EMS to arrive. So just wanted to remind you all of that. Okay, so I'll go ahead and open it up now to any questions, answers, discussion, thoughts, experience, or ideas that you might have. And I apologize, I don't think I looked at the chat the entire time I was talking. So sorry about that. I will go back through it right now. Okay, there's no questions.
Hey, Jen.
Hi.
So with regards to formation of kidney stones, is that less of a salt intake issue and more of just a dehydration issue, or is it like the combination of both? Or because if you do drink the more fluids because of the salt and you're retaining more fluids, I would think you wouldn't get them, but.
Well, some people can be prone to kidney stones as more of like a genetic thing, but my understanding is it's mostly related to hydration.
Okay. Okay.
I could Google it for more info, Greg, but I know that you could probably Google it too. So
yeah, just stay hydrated in general will help everything. And then also really quick with the what is the best secondary source of identifying hydration, excluding urine, for those that like take multivitamins and may have discolored urine due to their vitamins?
Yeah, that is actually a great question, Greg, because there are medications that can cause urine discoloration, make it look a little bit darker. One of the hallmark first symptoms is having a headache. Okay. I think that's pretty often what people experience in early dehydration, but also just feeling really tired, fatigued, kind of in a slump.
Okay, so instead of reaching for that additional coffee or energy drink, if you have a headache or are tired, you should try water first?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, drink a glass of water, see how you feel. It might just perk you right up, and then, yeah, avoid the caffeine if you can, just because it will actually make dehydration worse.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm. All right, it is 3:00. Does anybody have any other comments or questions before we end our call today? All right, well, thank you all so much for coming today. This was really fun. I know Nellie and I both are very much enjoying doing these classes, meeting with you guys, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome. Have a great day.